So I did bring enough sort of information with me that I am quite happy just to talk and have you listen. My preference is always to have it be a little bit more interactive than that, but I do respect that some of this can be sort of hard to talk about. So I will just begin, and if anybody has something that they want to contribute, a personal experience, a question, please just jump in and we can share that way. It's just sort of however you are the most comfortable. So as Lisa said, I am a financial advisor. I've been with Asante. I'm a partner at Asante here in Kingston. And I've been doing this working with families for probably 25 years now. And over that time, I came to realize that we as a group are very good at planning for people to get to traditional retirement. And then we tend to sort of jump over and do estate planning. We were missing this whole period in between that I call age planning or elder planning. And realistically, in this day and age where we're living so much longer, if we're retiring at 55, 60, 65, some people choosing to live or to work longer, but we're living so much longer, well into our 90s, 100, that there was this real period of aging where our needs change. From a financial point of view, the planning that we have to do changes. It's just very practical things like, can I afford to stay in my home? Can I afford to go to a retirement home? Will I outlive my money? Those sorts of things. But there were also some very practical things from the people that I was working with that were sharing with me that I realized that as financial planners, we were missing out. We weren't providing service in an area that increasingly needed service. In 2012, I got an accreditation, a certified professional consultant on aging, which is kind of a funny name, but I really wanted to understand from a social, a health, and a financial point of view how aging impacted our lives, just to understand that better. So my business now is almost predominantly in working with what I call seniors. It sounds funny, but there are sort of seniors start, as early as age 50, 55, but do go well up into 100 plus at this point. So seniors who are probably 70, 75 plus is their age, and or what I call their adult children caregivers. So it's today where we're looking at, you can be a power of attorney. We're going to talk specifically about powers of attorney for caregiving purposes. And you can be a power of attorney for a spouse, a partner, a brother, a sister. Today what I was hoping to talk about was really that intergenerational relationship between a parent or perhaps an aunt or an uncle and an adult caregiver, because the adult children have a lot of competing demands. Okay, so that sound fair? Any questions at this point in time? No? So I just thought we would start very briefly with a few statistics. 8.1 million Canadians, that's 30% of us, are caregiving in some way. 54% are female, 46% male. 80% of care at home is provided by family and friends. So that means it's not in an institution like a hospital, and it's not being serviced out to paid personal support workers. It's family and friends that are doing 80% of the caregiving. 50% of the caregivers have been caregiving for 4 or more years. So I'm going to circle back to that later. Anybody who assumes a role of a power of attorney, when we initially take that job, we don't think about how long, how many years that can potentially run for. And I can tell you, it can run for a long, long time. So we're going to give you some tips and tricks to be prepared for that. 75% of caregivers are in the workforce, and 28% of them have children that are under 18. So that adult caregiver has a lot of competing demands on their time. One investment firm that did a study of the intergenerational, so the two different groups, had some interesting statistics. that 72% of parents expect one of their children will assume caregiver responsibilities if need be, but only 40% of kids identified as filling this role, they didn't know that. So there's a lack of communication there, right? 69% of parents expect one of their children will help manage their investments and retirement finances. More than a third of the children, 36%, didn't know this. Okay, so one of the things we're talking about today is just having conversations, communicating a little bit. Location of important documents. 3 out of 10 families surveyed disagreed as to whether or not the children knew where to find important family documents, such as wills, powers of attorney, and health care. Okay? The good news is families who had conversations enjoyed greater peace of mind. So how important are these conversations? 93% of children who had any detailed conversation with their parents are significantly more likely to possess greater peace of mind around these issues, as are the parents. So just having the conversation is helping all of us with peace of mind.
What about talking about having a conversation? We should get together one sometime.
Yeah, that well, it's a start. How about I say that? It's a starting point for it. A good place to start, to have the conversation. And no time is too early. These studies show that a lot of us think, oh no, we've got lots of time, we can put it off, we can put it off. I mean, with my planning work, because I'm a planner and that's everything that I do, I say start talking to your kids about your expectation for their education and payment when they're little. Don't wait until they're about to go to university and then say, oh, by the way, you've got to pay for some of this. Have the conversations early. So the same applies with this. If you are able to, have the conversation early. So powers of attorney is where we're focusing today. I'm not a lawyer, so this comes with a little disclaimer. I don't give legal advice. I'm here today just to give you some tips and tricks and strategies from very practical things that I've learned day to day, but I do always suggest that you get legal counsel when you're having any of these documents prepared. But what is a power of attorney? And we had this discussion when I came in. We short form it sometimes and call it a POA. Power of attorney, and there's really 2 documents that you can have as a power of attorney. Quite often if you go to a lawyer to have a will executed, that's all executed means, sorry the word sounds awful, to have a will drawn up for yourself, which I also recommend. They will do powers of attorney at the same time. Sometimes I find people don't want to do a power of attorney because they start thinking about from here until the end of life, and what if this person gets too old, or what if they move away. Always just say, in the next 5 years, is this a good answer to my question? So a power of attorney is a document that you sign where you are giving authority to another individual to make decisions on your behalf for either personal care, so health decisions, or for financial decisions, property. They don't need to be the same person. Some people do name the same person. Other people, if it's a parent naming with children, they might have a son who's better in hospitals, a daughter that's better with financial aspects, so it does not have to be the same person, or it can be the same person. And then you should also name an alternate as well, just in case that person is not able to act. What a power of attorney is not, it is not an executor in a will, it is not a will. So a power of attorney is in effect during your lifetime, and it is used either because you are not able to, for health reasons, make decisions on your behalf, or perhaps because you are traveling and not able to take care of some business that needs to be handled. Yeah?
If it's just during the person's lifetime, does any of it extend beyond death?
No. Power of attorney stops the day you die, and then your will comes into effect, and your executor becomes the agent who works on your behalf. So you may have been named as a power of attorney for somebody. You may also be their executor. And my hope for you after today is that you will find that out before you actually get called into having to act. It is one of the few jobs in our life that we will take on, and we will not know when we're going to start, when it's going to finish. We kind of have an idea what the roles and responsibilities are, but not completely. We don't know if we're going to get paid or how much we're going to get paid. I say you think it's an honor when somebody asks you if you will be their power of attorney until you do it once. And then you will learn that it's a lot of work. Okay? So you may have been named power of attorney. You may not know you've been named power of attorney. So now we're going to get to some practicalities about how to ask some questions, start having the conversation about can we have the conversation. Before we do that though, I want to just sort of lay a little bit of a framework about what I have seen from these two different groups of people. Yeah?
Actually, can I ask, when you said that you may not know this,
Yeah.
When I became power of attorney, but this is for somebody in Germany,
Yes.
I was informed by letter that that was the case. So is that not the case in Canada, that when,
No. So at the time you were actually designated, you received a letter
I
saying,
received a letter from, I think it's a central
that's
organization.
wonderful. Canada
that
should
it
do
wasn't-
that.
It wasn't the person who did it, but it was
Yeah.
totally separate from it. It informed me that that had happened, that I had been
Yeah.
named. And so, I mean, you know, yes, you can also have the conversation, but it,
Yeah.
anyway, so that's not the case
Not
here.
the
So you
case
would
in
not
Canada.
necessarily know.
You do have an option. Yes, here you could name any family member and there's no obligation, there's no notification at the time of naming. So it would potentially just be at the time that it's required that you would find out. You do have the opportunity to renounce those responsibilities, but if it's a family member, you know, that may be difficult to do. So we try and plan for it to be a little bit smoother. So we're dealing with what we call the adult senior and the child caregiver, and every single situation is different. Every one of us is an individual. Stories are all different, but in general, some common threads that I see is from the parent. As we age, all of us want to maintain our independence. That is one of the key things that we want, is to remain independent. We don't want to be a burden on anyone, never mind our children who we know, and I hear this time and time again from the parent, and we want to remain relevant. We want to know that we still matter. So if you are the adult caregiver, go into your role remembering that. For the adult caregiver, what we want is to protect the people that we love. So you can immediately see on the one side you've got, I want independence, and on the other side you've got, I want to protect you. And those two things don't always come together in a good way. But if there's an awareness there, I think it just helps the situation always. And also the caregiver is busy. We've already determined that they're working full-time, they have their own immediate family, potentially they may have children, lots of different demands on their time. I can tell you I've been a caregiver twice, and now I'm moving into a role of starting to caregive for my own parents with all of the dynamics that come with that. And you're busy. There's a lot to do. The other thing is that remember that while you're so busy with the running through your list of all of the to-dos, whether it's grocery or laundry or housework or whatever it is you're doing, that there's just two people there. And sometimes it's just about stopping for a few minutes and actually just spending some time together. And it was one of the people that I was looking after, and I got and did all my things, and then she said, aren't you going to stop and visit? And I thought, oh, that's not what I was going for here. I wanted her to feel cared for, not the opposite. So keep that in mind. And the other thing is that realistically in this life, this is going to happen in one of two ways. Families are either going to start having conversations and be open about it and be able to discuss it and have somewhat of a plan in place, or they're not, they're going to go the other way. And there's all kinds of reasons for it to go the other way. People may not want to face up to aging, they may not want to give up, they may feel it's giving up their independence. I call it the head in sand approach. And either way, likely at some point in time, that power of attorney is going to go into effect. And you will either be dealing with something that you've been a bit more prepared for, or you will be dealing with a crisis situation. And this is just for me to say to you, I've seen examples of both. And if it is the crisis situation, it's not ideal, but you will be okay. You will be able to hopefully remember some things from today, put them in place at the time that you need to, and just move forward from there. Okay? Any other questions at this point? No? Comments? No.
What happens if there's no power of attorney named?
If there's no power of attorney named, it actually goes to the courts and they appoint somebody. Yeah. Yeah, not an ideal situation, but yeah, that's why we try and have the conversations ahead of time. Quite often, I find with all ages that I'm working with, if there's not a power of attorney, so if you're able to have the conversation and you find out that there isn't a power of attorney in place, the biggest thing that gets in all of our ways is trying to work it all through ahead of time so we never make the call to a lawyer. And I always just say to people, if you've got a lawyer in your life already through real estate or whatever it is, through a friend or somebody that you know, pick up the phone, make the appointment. They will guide you through everything that you need to do and make it easy for you. Quite often that's the hardest point. Yeah. So to determine if you are power of attorney, just start having a conversation with whoever it is that is your adult parent figure in your life. So, you know, I say, tell them you were at this talk today and you just had some questions and you were wondering if they've named as a power of attorney. Whatever it is, you have a friend that's had the situation. See, some families will just say, yeah, it's you. Surprise! Yeah. Yeah. If either party works with a financial advisor, somebody like me, go see them. See if they'll have some of these conversations around the table. At times we do that as well. Pay attention to signals with your family member too. Are they starting to misplace things? Are they starting to, ideally you've had this conversation way in advance, but if not, if that's where it's at today, are they starting to be forgetful about some things? And I think if you're always approaching it first, sometimes in my experiences people are sort of being a little bit protective. If you're coming at it from the financial aspect, am I your power of attorney for property finances, we can tend to close up a little bit more. But when we're talking about taking care of ourselves and our health care and looking after us, we seem to open up a little bit more. So you may want to start the conversation if it's a more difficult one on the healthcare side of things. And pay attention, like I said, to those little clues. Are they forgetting certain things? With family members, there can be a whole history of sort of dynamics that come along there. Again, I know in my own family situation, my dad is starting to have some memory problems. And my mom tells us that he's having memory problems. But if I'm in a room with the two of them, if he hesitates for a moment, she jumps in with the answers. So it's one of the things I do in my meetings with people is I ask them questions, and a lot of times it's information I know or it doesn't seem really relevant to the actual financial part of things, but I'm listening for clues. I want to know, how are they managing with their bill payments? Are they taking care of their tax installments? All of those sorts of things, listening to see if they're having trouble, because if I get the sense they're having trouble, then I can be having these conversations with them as well. So listen for those sorts of things. Get some information. So I don't wanna generate paper, but I have copies of this if people are interested in it. Let's just pass these around, and if you wanna take them home, and if you don't, then we'll leave them here. The top one is just what we call a power of attorney checklist. And I would say this one has been very well received with the people that we work with. It's just some really practical questions. So even in my own business, all I used to say to the people that I was working with is, do you have a power of attorney and a will? And they would say yes, and I would put a tick in the box and I would move on, no more conversation. And then as I started delving into it a little bit more over time, I realized if I asked them who have they named as power of attorney, they weren't always sure who they had named. So if you're talking to a parent and you say, do you have a power of attorney? And then who have you named as power of attorney? And they seem a little bit hesitant, say, do you think maybe we could get the document out and actually read through it? When I read through these documents with the people I work with, they don't really know what's in there. They're not really sure who they named. They think they named somebody, but then it's been ages since they've looked at it. So see, especially with the power of attorney, this does not tell you anything about where they bank, how much money they have. This is just a 2-page, 3-page document sometimes that says, I name this person to take care of me in case of a health situation, this person in a financial situation. And there may be some other sort of directives that come in, but there's no personal information really in there that they would feel they couldn't share it with you. So see if you can do that. If you determine that you have been named as the power of attorney, then these are sort of questions that from experience I've had with the people we're working with is good information to have. So even if you are, let's say, both of your parents are alive, they've named each other as power of attorney for each other, but you're the alternate. You know you're the next one to step into place. You still might want to have this information on file, even though it's a little bit down the road. What is their doctor's name and address? What is their health card number and the version number? You might just want a photocopy of it. Medications and allergies, where their pharmacy is, the location, and if they have a health benefit provider, what that name and contact information. And I will tell you, that was from a real example of a daughter that we work in this case with the parent, the mother, and with one of the daughters. And she lived in Toronto, and mom was rushed to hospital, and daughter flying up the 401 didn't have any of this information when she arrived. Now fortunately we had a fair bit of this information just by coincidence, and we're able to give it to her, but now I think if everybody can have it ahead of time and just tuck it aside somewhere, you will be that much more prepared. If you flip over just to the back of that, just some tips. So again, this one is the healthcare one. Get yourself an accordion file. This is, now she's just gone away. She's the one that is actually the power of attorney that wants to wait. Wanted to know if she was doing everything. But get yourself an accordion file that you can keep track of all of these documents in. Can I ask, how many people here are a power of attorney? Acting right now? Yes? Yes?
We have paperwork, but not being.
Not in place at this point in time.
Yeah, paperwork's done.
Okay, good. And then are there people that suspect they've been power of attorney? They may be, don't know? Yeah, okay. So get yourself an accordion file. Can I ask, are you power of attorney for both healthcare and property?
Yes.
And do you have like a file or something that you carry everything around in?
I have a book
Yeah?
that I put a lot of stuff in.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the best thing that you can do. I suggest that whether it's for power of attorney for healthcare or for property, you have some kind of a filing system that's mobile, that you can be carrying back and forth with you to go to appointments, that it's all in one place. For healthcare, I suggest that you get yourself just some kind of a small little notebook that you can record appointments, assuming that you are going to appointments with the individual. That at the back, you can just keep names and numbers of contacts. And at the front, you can just have a running list of all of the appointments that you've been to, when next appointments are coming, and any little things. Our minds get so full, it's just a good way to check back. If you're traveling out of city to be a power of attorney, a lot of the hotels have compassionate care rates, so ask about that. Some hospitals have long-term parking rates, so ask about that. And don't forget to communicate with your family members, the other family members. So if you've got brothers and sisters, to be sort of keeping them in the loop, which can be a time-consuming thing.
Can I make a suggestion too? My parents get regular blood work for various issues,
Yeah.
and I've become their Life Labs coordinator of their blood work.
Love it.
So they just say, I went to the doctor, had blood work, and then when things aren't followed up from the doctor, or they can't remember when the doctor called and said something, I have paper copies in a binder that I
Love
can
it.
grab and take to the hospital.
Fantastic. That's exactly the sort of thing that I'm talking about. Set yourself up a system, whatever the system is that works for you, just a system so that you don't keep it up here in your head.
So how would you do that?
My parents just went to Life Labs, they said, are you on the computer? They're not, so they handed over the little form and gave it to me. I needed their health card number
Yeah.
and the date of the appointment, and now I can get all their blood results at any time.
Yeah, so Life Labs is where you go and you get your blood work done, and probably other stuff too. And they now have an online reporting system, so you can register for that, and they will email results, or you
You have to
log
log
in,
in,
yeah, you log in
It's in
and check.
Ontario, so if somebody lives
Yeah.
in another place, you might be able to do these things from afar.
Yeah, and that sort of gets me back to the, remember to take a few minutes and just sort of stop and visit, rather than just checking all the things off of your list, is that what I've also witnessed is we are very willing as a society to hire out some of our household things, so snow shoveling, lawn care, gardening, those sorts of things, but for some reason we're very hesitant to do the more traditional housework sorts of things, the inside things. And I hear time and time again from people that the grocery shopping and the getting the food in and the laundry, so just consider, and everybody has different financial situations, but if the financial foundation is strong and you can hire out services, see what is available that you have the option to hire out, so that you're not exhausting yourself if you are in the caregiver position. From a financial point of view, it's even more critical, I think, to be doing the record keeping, especially if there are other family members. People say to me all the time, me and my brothers and sisters, we all get along, everything's fine, and I say, great, we want to make sure that stays that way. And I will tell you, being somebody that works in money does funny things to people, so we always just make sure that you as a power of attorney are protected, and don't have people coming back. I have oh sorry, I thought you were putting your hand up. I've had situations where a caregiver has been looking after their parent for 15 years. And over that time, family resources have reduced because mom and dad have been in a retirement home, their care expenses have gone up. And so then when they do pass away, the siblings come forward and say, hey, 15 years ago, mom and dad had a lot more money. Where is all the money now? And the individual says, geez, when I took on this job as power of attorney, I had no idea it was going to go for this long. I didn't keep a record of everything. So again, just set yourself up some kind of a system that you've got record keeping that's not cumbersome. You've got enough to do already, but it's got to show you have what we call a fiduciary responsibility. This is actually a true responsibility that you have. So take it on with that and just be able to document and show where money has gone. Don't commingle bank accounts, those sorts of things. Just keep it nice and clean and straight. The other really important thing here too, it's sort of jumping back to there are all kinds of different people and wanting independence. An occupational therapist that I spoke with once who was going into seniors' homes and helping them really stay in their home for as long as possible. And I met her just after she came out of an appointment, and she was saying to me, you know, this individual really shouldn't be bathing herself, and is putting herself in a little bit of risk every time she does, because it's hard for her to be getting in and out of the tub on her own. And she said, but the individual is of full capacity, she knows what decisions she's making, and she has said to me, I understand the risk, it's a risk I'm willing to take, thank you very much. And I think sometimes in our world we're so protective of the ones we love that we forget that we can make bad decisions whether we're 50 or 70. We don't lose that right just because we are aging. So to keep that in mind too is, I think it goes a long way with the family dynamics, just to keep that in mind as well. Okay. For power of attorney for property, that's the financial one. So that's where people may be a little bit more hesitant. Again, I find when I'm sitting around the table with people, when I start with the personal care one, people are grabbing at that sheet. They want extra copies to take home for other individuals, other family members. This one, people just seem to tighten up a little bit. So that's where we just say, find out who the professionals are that your parents are working with. So where do they bank as a starting point? If they have a financial advisor that they're working with, if they have a lawyer, if they have an accountant, you don't need to know those people, you just need to know where to contact them if you get to that point that you need some extra assistance. As power of attorney for property, your responsibility is paying all the bills, filing tax returns, all of those sorts of things. When you break it down and say, what is the financial administration I need to take care of in my own life, that transfers over into your parents' life as well. And we go through this interesting arc in our financial lives. When we're young, we're completely dependent on others to provide us with financial resources and to do all of the administration for us. And then we come into adulthood and we gain independence, hopefully on both of those aspects, where financially we could take care of ourselves and we learn how to run the business of taking care of ourselves. And then as we age, we either start losing interest in it, or we just can't do it anymore if we have some capacity problems. So have conversations with your parents. Find out how their bills are paid. It's a really simple question. How are you paying your bills? And you know what? In a few years, ask them again. How are they paying their bills? Most of the seniors that I'm working with are not paying them online. There is a generational thing there, but they are using telephone banking, or they have automatic payments, or some of them are paying them all online. Sometimes they're paying them twice online, right? So it's those sorts of things that you want to find out. And I just always imagine if they just tomorrow couldn't answer questions for you, would you know who to call? Would you know where to look for their documents? So you don't need to know, exactly where each file is, but would you know where in the house to look for their documents? Some people keep a filing cabinet. Do they have a safety deposit box? Just little questions like that you just sort of go, oh, okay, you have a safety deposit box. Where's the key? So I ask those questions and I make a little note in my file for people, but those are good questions for you to be asking as well. Yeah.
So, when you think that your parent may not be, or the person, shouldn't say parent, but it is.
Yeah.
So, when you think that person is maybe no longer competent in some area of their life around some set of decisions that they're making, you just take over? Like, what happens? Is there a button you push somewhere? You
I
know,
wish it was that
You
easy.
go up at the bank and say, here I am, and here's the piece of paper, and I'm paying my mom's bills for her today? Or do you, and then does it go back and forth, or is it like, once you cross that line?
No,
you crossed
those are really good questions. So all of those things can happen. So a power of attorney, there can be two types of power of attorney. There can be, there's the two types, so there's property and personal care, but then there can be two types within those two types. One that's what I call just a general power of attorney, that somebody says, at any point in time, you're my power of attorney, and whether I'm traveling or incapacitated in some way, I trust you to make decisions on my behalf, and here's the document, and you're ready to go if I need you. And so that might be, I'm traveling for a month, but I've got this business, I need you to take care of it, so use it, but when I'm back, I'm fully fine to use it mine. So that could be a back and forth sort of thing. Or, I'm in a coma for a month and then I
Somebody's
recover and I'm
hospitalized
fine.
for-
Yeah, there are other powers of attorney that have what we call a springboard clause in it, where it's actually a condition has to be met. So in that situation, a doctor or two doctors have to actually say, Jane Lapointe is no longer has the capacity to act on her behalf. And some people, then you go to the lawyer once the doctor's in that document is released to you. So there are variations in what you may be getting and receiving. So once you've got that document, whether it's one time off or back and forth, you would, and I encourage people that I work with certainly to go, if it's a power of attorney for property, have it lodged at the financial institution as early as possible. So the clients I work with, I try and say, let's get that in place so that we just know it's covered off. I know that I don't need to use it now, that Joan has capacity and is doing all of her own business, but if I need it and her daughter Susie is going to step in, it's already in place. For our firm, what happens is that legal document comes in and we actually send it off to our legal department who make sure everything's okay. We have the power of attorney sign and we get basic information on the power of attorney, and then it's what we call lodged. It's official and ready to go. That said, the people I work with, I work very closely with them. So if suddenly daughter Susie showed up and I had just talked to Joan the day before and knew everything was okay, I do feel a fiduciary responsibility as well to be looking out. We know that there is abuse of this that can happen. I would probably pick up the phone and say to Joan, hey, Susie's here, this seems a little bit out of sorts, what's going on? Fortunately, I've never had that situation happen. Banks can be a little bit trickier to deal with, in my experience. And it doesn't mean that it's an awareness thing. They will actually want you to sign their own power of attorney document. From what I understand with lawyers, you don't need to sign their power of attorney because if you've been to a lawyer, you have a legal document, so you don't need to sign another one. I've spoken with one lawyer that says you actually shouldn't sign that document because it then supersedes the one you've already seen. I'm not a lawyer. I just know that you don't have to sign if you're going in with a power of attorney that the lawyer has signed, it's legal. I have had a client situation where they walked down to the bank to lodge the power of attorney, came back to my office in tears because mom, who's in ICU at the hospital, the bank has said to them, and this is a general power of attorney, no springboard clause, so does not need any evidence of incapacity, has said to the power of attorney, you need to go back to the hospital and get the doctor to write a letter confirming your mom is in the hospital. Yeah, that's what I said. I said, come on, let's go back to the bank. So we walked back over to the bank and I said, I don't get this. They're pretty busy over there. I don't know, this is a legal document. And she said, well, there's lots of elder abuse and we want to protect. And I said, so all you need to know is this individual is in the hospital? Yeah. here's KGH, patient locating telephone number, and we were lucky, it was a good banker. She just phoned the hospital, confirmed, and she could check whatever box she needed to check. But then I stopped and I thought, wait a second, 2 weeks ago, I had a different individual go to exactly that same bank, same situation, and they hadn't requested that, so I phoned just to make sure I hadn't been kept out of some loop. And no, they had just lodged the power of attorney. The difference in the situation was the amount of money. So, I guess in this litigious society, the truth of the matter is if they're releasing a lot of, it's a risk factor that they're taking in. But I have heard time and time again, another power of attorney who actually is employed here at Queen's University, a very bright individual and doesn't get pushed away very often. Every time he goes in to try and do some banking for his father, they're saying your dad needs to be here for you to do it. Yeah, exactly. So I think it's just an education thing, and banks will gradually learn, is my hope. Or that if you just feel a little bit confident about what you're doing, I don't know. It's frustrating. You'll get frustrated all the way around here.
We went through some interesting things with my father-in-law who was developing dementia.
Yeah.
And his son in Kitchener had power of attorney for health and everything, but had problems with taxes. So be sure with income tax, even though he had all the paperwork, my father-in-law decided he no longer needed to pay tax.
Yeah.
So he stopped paying and he had arrears, and it took my brother-in-law literally months with multiple documents to prove that he was doing the taxes for a person and to get the arrears paid. So keep good paper trails and things. Yeah, make sure they're actually paying those quarterly or any installments at all. Because he was saying, I can do it myself. He's very, very confident that he could do things, but
And that sort of gets back to part of your other question I hadn't addressed yet, is like there's not just a switch you can flip. So as people are having some dementia, they may still try and do some of this. I hear of parents that do go to the bank and still transact with banking. And where there's dementia, that's hard for you as a power of attorney. You just have to sort of be.
People are being scammed.
People are being scammed. People that have full capacity are being scammed. So in this day and age, be very careful. Revenue Canada, we are hearing time and time again, people are getting phone calls from Revenue Canada. It's not Revenue Canada asking for payments. I had another one just last week. They've really upped the game on those phone calls and seem to know too much information and are very aggressive. Revenue Canada will not be that aggressive with you. If there's a professional accountant in your world that's filing taxes, you can always say, I will have my representative call you. I've heard where they said, we don't want to talk to your accountant, we're only going to deal with you. That's a red flag. Yeah. So going over bank statements, I say as power of attorney, if you're able to on a regular basis go through bank statements, it's always the first place I start. If somebody comes to me and they're not sure on what bills are this is where I say if you suddenly tomorrow wake up in your power of attorney, the first thing to do is get a copy of a bank statement and go through it. You're going to see where automatic payments are going to be made. You're going to see if checks are being written. It's going to tell you a lot from that bank statement.
I had to call my dad's health insurance company. And I can't remember exactly what I wanted to do, but they wanted to talk to him. I said, I have power of attorney. But they wanted me to send all that in. And but what they did that day was just talk to my dad, and he said, yes, it can do this. So does that mean I should be sending these documents to these various?
So the healthcare provider, the health benefit provider will want, if they've got credit cards, they will want to have the power of attorney. So typically you need more than one copy of these powers of attorney. It's the one original is the original that's got an original signature. When you make copies of them, you have to either go to a notary, which they can do at City Hall, or a lawyer, and they make what we call notarized copies, which just means they've got the official stamp that says this is a true copy of the original, I've seen the original. And I say typically get anywhere from half a dozen to a dozen, depending on how complicated the situation is. With our firm, we send it out and get it back and can return it to you, but that can take a few weeks' time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just sort of start a list of who you've sent it to and who you still need to send it to, and just work your way through.
And if you're going to get copies, if you've got the springboard clause, you have to get a copy of the doctor's letter as well. Because I've had to do that for Ian.
Yeah.
So when I send in the power of attorney, do I send the covering letter? Does my dad sign it? Or,
No,
no, because he's already
Yeah,
agreed to it.
he's already agreed to it, yeah, so they should, if, depending on whether there's a springboard or any conditions in it, then they will probably just want information from you. I always would put a cover letter, even if it's just handwritten, with your contact information, give them a telephone number, give them an email. More information is not a bad thing.
But it has to be
And
notarized by a lawyer, and who else?
Just by a lawyer, or sorry, I say a lawyer, but City of Kingston, down at City Hall, there's a notary there, that can also do it. Yeah, they charge a small fee, I'm not sure how much they charge for that, but there is,
But you'd have to have the original too.
yes, there has to be one original.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of online POAs available now as opposed to going through a lawyer. Are they just as valid, or are you
Yeah.
still better off going through a lawyer?
They are just as valid. So there are power of attorney kits and there are will kits that you can do. I would tell you 25 years ago when I started in this business, I probably wouldn't have hesitated as much. I have seen them and they're fine and they do the job. There can be execution problems, so the way that if they're not done properly, then they're not valid at all. So my preference would be to see a lawyer. I think the senior center here in Kingston has some, a lawyer that works there. There are some, because not everybody can afford to go see a lawyer, I do appreciate that. So there are some other avenues. So if it's all or nothing, do the power of attorney kit. Just pay attention to, it has to be properly witnessed, so pay attention to that. And if the situation has any sort of complication, I say, so if there's real estate or if there's, you know, more financial accounts, I would really recommend going to a lawyer and having it done that way. Lawyers don't really, for the most part, make very much money off of wills and powers of attorney. It's a pretty critical document for us in the end. We should all be able to get sick or die without a lawyer, but sadly in this day and age, it's getting harder and harder to do.
Going back to the health question, I mean, I'm assuming with the property issues, mostly your responsibility is just to handle them competently.
Yes.
But with health issues, sometimes people have strong preferences for certain types of health decisions you
Yes.
would need to make. Do you have or do you know of a document that runs through the kinds of questions you should ask to somebody if you have power of attorney over health, about how they want, what kinds of decisions that they would want you
Yeah.
to make? Is
Yeah, there
something like
are
that?
some resources online, and I may have some. There's a, I think it's an end-of-life planning group, that had, I feel like I saw one fairly recently. And if you just put in End-of-Life Planning Canada, I'm not saying that's the organization, if you've got access, internet access, that they had some good questions and talking points. Some of it is covered off in the power of attorney, so sometimes it's, if they don't want heroic measures, that type of thing. But good conversation pieces to have, so, yeah.
If you look up a healthcare directive, too, you can find documents.
In Alberta, they home care people do it, and it's called a personal directive, and then you get a series of questions. So Ontario probably has something similar, but
Yeah.
it's called personal directive, so you might Google and find something.
Yeah.
And if the person you're looking after is in a long-term care home, they will ask some of those questions.
They will.
When they're admitted, so they have it on file as well.
Yeah,
And
even,
it's not very detailed, but
no,
there is something.
it's not, and it doesn't always get communicated to the power of attorney, which is why, and I think you're being proactive in thinking about asking the questions really early on, which is great to open up the discussions, because you're right, in the hospitals, long-term care facilities, or even individuals that are at home but have care from CCAC, which is a community care access group. Once we're released from hospital, they quite often kick in and come and help provide care. They're asking some of those questions, and there's like a do not resuscitate sort of directive that is typically found on somebody's refrigerator if they're at home, I think.
Just a small point, I had to do something with Service Canada in order to have access to my husband's OAS and CPP. And I had to send them the copy of the power of attorney,
Yes.
and I asked them to return it to me, and
Yes.
they did.
Yeah.
So, because you have to pay for those copies,
Yeah,
you know, you might as well have them back if you
yeah.
can get them back.
Yeah, and that would be my default, is to always ask for it back, even if you think you have way too many copies, because if something else is going to pop up that you need it for, so that's, very good advice. Yeah.
It's about 1 o'clock, so it's probably a good time to just kind of officially end.
Yes.
Usually some people have to be somewhere at 1 o'clock, so
Yeah.
seemingly.
Yeah.
And people don't like to interrupt the talk, so I don't know, I can't
The
remember
only
if you
thing
can
I
stay
wanted to
around.
say is that, I can stick around.
Okay.
The only thing I wanna say in leaving is this can be I'll get emotional, a really special time. So remember that when you're getting weighed down with all of the checking off and making sure, and crazy financial institutions asking you for stuff, is it can be a really special time. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Jane.